Good morning, everybody, and you're very welcome to my presentation on the UL Green IT project, which was an EPA Green Enterprise project from back in 2016. This is the team of people involved. As myself, Colin Fitzpatrick. I'm from the Department of Electronic and Computer Engineering, and also on the UL Environmental Committee. There's Yvonne Griffin from the ITD department or IT department. Kate McMahon, who was a research assistant on the project, who's also from the Department of Electronic and Computer Engineering, and Chris Fogarty, who's our energy manager in buildings and estates. And together we were the team behind this project. So just a little bit of an introduction to UL. If you're not familiar with it, UL is established in 1972 and is a suburban campus just outside Limerick City. And it's obviously it's a very beautiful campus. It's an open parkland space, River Shannon running through the middle of it. We've about 15,000 students, 1,300 staff, and those are some important statistics about the scale of the campus. Just again, a little bit about our green credentials. We've had the Antashka Green Campus flag since 2015, and that's been renewed. And also in the UI Green Metric World University Rankings, we're ranked 20th overall in the 2019 and 6th in the world among suburban campuses. We've lots of other different activities we'd like to tell you about. We've got our farmers market, which is dedicated to sustainable consumption. We also have a smarter travel program, and this is just an example where every week students can have access to free bicycle repair and maintenance. We have our community roof garden, which is run entirely by volunteers, where we do organic fruit and vegetable production. We have an apiary on campus, and we have a dedicated team there producing local honey for us every year. We've also had a long commitment to waste prevention, and there's been discounts for your reusable cups for many years on campus. And we also have a really extensive network of water refill stations with many millions of plastic bottles prevented as a result of this. And as I said, the River Shannon is kind of the outstanding natural feature of the campus. And every year after winter floods, a group of volunteers will go and clean the riverbanks from all of the various plastic wastes that have been washed down stream from the rest of the country. Okay, so that's a bit of background about our long-standing commitment to the environment on campus, and the Green Enterprise project kind of fitted into that track record. Again, 2016, and a green IT strategy for the University of Limerick. So at the outset, the approach we took to this was that we needed to look at who were the important stakeholders and IT users on campus, and what were the various life cycle stages of computing, and how would we develop plans in order to reduce the environmental impacts of each of these stages. So we essentially broke it into grids. There are two major users of IT on campus: the staff and students. And then the life cycle of electronic equipment happens around the manufacture, the use, and when it becomes waste. So establishing this matrix, then we brainstormed to what ideas or what type of projects we could take on in order to improve our environmental performance around IT. So obviously to reduce the manufacturing burden of equipment, you buy equipment that is a reduced environmental impact, So for staff, that would be relevant to around procurement, and for students, we decided to see if we could make refurbished equipment available. So again, to actually bring reuse to the fore. For energy use, there are various areas where we have influence of energy use. Obviously, our staff computers, the energy management of those was going to be looked at. We have our own data centers on campus, and then obviously we have some IT resources out in the cloud, to examine that issue, and then to look at the energy management of student computer clusters. And then for waste, there's a lot of different areas could be tackled. We looked at a platform for internal use of equipment. We looked at what was happening to our equipment at end of life. Was it possible for stuff to be reused? And then we looked at basically we collections. So were we collecting and recycling we in the appropriate way? In terms of students, then we decided to see if we could explore some repair cafes, and also to do some end of semester collection events. And that kind of manifested itself into these nicely discrete little project areas that we were going to take on. So this project then had a lot of stakeholders, and we had a project steering committee, which was kind of like, I suppose, led by our environmental committee, but endorsed by the president. And then we gathered together who we thought would be the relevant people on this. So from our IT department, our buildings and estates department, the students union, campus life services and procurement. And from that project steering committee, we then split off different project subgroups with the relevant people allocating resources in terms of personnel into staffing these little project groups, and they all ran as little discrete units of work. So just again, so what I'm going to do now is I'm basically going to step through all of these little projects and just give a very little high level about what was achieved, or first of all what we found, and then maybe what we achieved through them, and we can delve deeper into any of these during the Q&A. So around procurement, one thing that sort of pleasantly surprised us around this is that we found that the equipment that we were procuring already was of quite a high standard from an environmental perspective in terms of the eco labels that they had, and that much of the equipment that was being purchased was EPEAT Gold standard, which would include many life cycle environmental attributes, including Energy Star and ability for upgrading, repairing, and recyclability. So we also explored what can be done around a green public procurement point of view, and we have an agreement that we will incorporate the EU green public procurement recommendations into our future tenders. And I just checked this morning, our next computing tender is due up in 1 year from now, in November 2021. But I'm confident actually that this will be quite an easy process, as the IT suppliers have been very progressive in this front in recent years, and actually what is now standard equipment would have been considered to be very environmentally friendly in the past. So the baseline has moved, and the majority of offerings in IT now are of a criteria that will actually reach this European GPP. Now, in terms of access for students to better equipment from an environmental perspective, we partnered with a company called Green IT, and I put up their website there for you to see, greenit.ie. They're a supplier of high quality refurbished IT equipment, and we opened up a pop-up shop on campus. We were originally going to only do this for a month as a trial, but it turned out to be so popular that we extended it from 1 month until 2. And basically, here's a photograph. We had our pop-up shop and supplied refurbished computers or laptops, desktops, monitors, smartphones, tablets from here, and we ended up selling about 150 pieces of equipment to students in that time, actually 75 laptops. And we actually received an award from Limerick City and County Council for this, for an example of best practice in reuse. So the next thing we looked at here was the use of the cloud and the potential for the use of the cloud, and how that would impact on our the environmental, how we delivered our IT services. And what was very clear and interesting from our literature review was actually the cloud is by far the most efficient way of delivering many IT services. And this is an example of a publication from Microsoft, which shows the efficiency gains that come with with the use of the cloud versus various modes of delivery. And obviously the um, that UL would have categorized, by this analysis would have categorized as like kind of a medium on-premise mode of delivery. So by this study, it would have reckoned about an 80% improvement in CO2 equivalents per user would be possible. So that was encouraging, and it led us to explore what of our services are we currently delivering via the cloud, and we're delivering quite a number of them. And also during the course of this project, we developed a framework for the transitioning of additional services to the cloud. So that this was part of an ongoing project within IT and with our corporate governance. And so now we do have a process in place by which it is possible to transition existing services onto the cloud and the development of new IT services through the cloud. Now, when it comes to the energy saving measures, we've our staff computers, our student clusters, and our data centers to consider. And this is just some experimental work that was done by implementing different sort of energy management methods. This shows like the type of savings that's possible when a lab was shut down at midnight and switched on again at 8 a.m. And we could clearly see the amount of savings that were possible. We also did some surveys with the staff just to see the general level of acceptability that there would have been to more aggressive energy saving policies being put in place. And here we see like a very strong agreement by people to actually do this. This is would they support the policy of having their desktop computer put into standby mode and putting their monitor into standby mode? And again, you see for both of these, staff are very much in favor. So for our student PC clusters, we have a roadmap in place. It involves the introduction of something called lab stats, which will allow us to actually target what type of measures will be most effective and efficient for the use in student clusters. And then following on from that, we've got the Microsoft System Configuration Center Configuration Manager, which will be used then to implement those changes. And that's still a work in progress at this time. Now, when it comes to our data center management, one of the major issues around data centers is the IT cooling, and this is just a graph from a publication which just shows that the amount of power required in a data center is very much a function of the facility operating temperature. And that there's a measure for that which are used as a kind of like a coefficient of performance for our data centers, which is called the power usage effectiveness, and it's essentially a measure of your IT power versus your total facility power, and with one being a perfect figure where all of your power is just being used for IT, and then ratios above one can give a measure of how much power you're actually using for your cooling. And during the course of the project, we managed to bring our PUE down from about 1.65 down to about 1.45 by implementing efficiency measures in our own data center. But we've also done more analysis in terms of how the university server estate will be managed going forward. There are 3 data centers, and as we said, there is an emphasis on moving applications to the cloud, which is the most efficient place for them. But that also virtualization could become a big part of how the data centers are managed in the future. And virtualization is a method by which more than one system can run on the same server. Repair events. So we looking at our students again from a waste point of view, we decided it would be nice to do something around repair, and we developed a program of iPhone repair cafes, and we basically got ourselves trained up, a team of us, in how to do iPhone repair, and we ran a series of these events. We called so we focused on just four devices. We looked at the iPhone 5, 5C, 5S, and 6, which at the time were much more common among students. They've generally moved on to the sixes and the sevens and the eights now. So yeah, we chose them for reasons that they were quite common in use. They're quite repairable, and also just so that we would have to get a stock of spare parts in order to be able to do the repairs, so that we found that, like, by limiting the number of models, that meant that we would have higher success factors in our repair cafes. Yeah, so I said we ran a host of these through the course of the year, which was actually great fun. You get a great atmosphere, and students learn a lot about repairability and about electronics during the course of these. In fact, so it wasn't like a drop service where you drop your phone, you come back. The idea of a restart party or repair cafe is that there's actually learning about the repair involved, and the person whose phone it is actually sits with you and does the repair. Now, okay, so next area we tackled was our end of semester wheel clear outs. This was from the student villages. So our village managers often reported that a lot of e-waste was left behind by students at the end of the semester. So at the end of each semester, then we put in place a dedicated wee collection, and this was done in collaboration with European Recycling Platform, who kindly helped us out with this. And we just ran some promotions and put out the cages, and yeah, students recycled like we would have hoped them to. This is an example of some of the collections taking place. And again, just a nice way to make sure that this equipment was going to the correct recycling stream. And we also ran just like a public events to coincide with this for staff, where we put wee cages on campus, and we had a raffle, and that for every piece of wee that you recycled, you would get a ticket, and then the winning ticket being one of a refurbished iPad from our Green IT store. And we also set up like a routine, or we formalized the routine IT recycling. And under extended producer responsibility, the person or the company who supplies the IT equipment is obligated to actually collect and recycle that. So we formalized the process for that, and we began to recycle a lot more as a result of this. And again, this is for free. This comes under the extended producer responsibility obligations of your IT supplier. And then the last thing I'll just say is that the whole thing really hinges on departmental collaboration. That there's many different stakeholders involved in delivering a green IT project, and I'd say that the collaboration doesn't stop and end for us, didn't stop and end with the 1 year project we did. Many of these projects are being sustained, need to be sustained and developed, and that you're never really at the end line. It's always a journey in terms of green IT. So with that, I'd say thank you. I know this is the recording of the event, so there won't be Q&A, but during the real event, I hope that we'll have lots of questions and answers about our project.